You know that feeling when someone asks what you want for dinner and your mind goes completely blank? Not because you don't have preferences, but because some part of you is already scanning their face, reading their tone, calculating what answer would make this interaction the smoothest, what answer would prevent the slightest flicker of disappointment or the smallest ripple of tension. You say whatever they want before you even remember to check in with what you want. And you tell yourself, it's just dinner, it's not a big deal. Except it is never just dinner. It's the way you shrink your needs in real time, the way you laugh at jokes that sting a little, the way you listen far more than you speak, and when you do speak, you are careful to say things that keep the peace. You have been called a good listener, a kind person, a peacemaker, and you are those things. But there is a quiet, hollow echo underneath those compliments, a suspicion that maybe you are only good at relationships because you have learned how to disappear inside them. There is a specific kind of exhaustion that comes from this. It's not the tiredness of a long day at work, it's a deeper, cellular fatigue. It's the exhaustion of constant vigilance. You come home from a dinner with friends, and instead of feeling full, you feel drained. You replay conversations in your head, scanning for micro-expressions you might have missed. Did they think you were too quiet? Did you talk too much about yourself? You perform an emotional audit of the entire evening, and you usually find yourself wanting. This is the cost of over-adapting. The relationship survives, but a small piece of your own self does not. If this resonates, you have probably spent a lot of time thinking you are just bad at relationships. Maybe you think you're too sensitive or too anxious. Maybe you've been told you need to set better boundaries, as if that were a simple light switch you just forgot to flip. But the truth is rarely that simple. What if the reason you struggle to connect isn't because you were deficient in relationship skills, but because you were actually too skilled at a very specific, very old survival strategy? What if your bad relationship habits are actually a highly tuned, over-engineered adaptation that just doesn't fit the room temperature anymore? Here is the quiet reframe that changes everything. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are not a pushover. You are a person whose nervous system learned, probably very early on, that safety was conditional, that love required a specific performance, that your own internal state was less important than the external state of the room. This isn't a character flaw. It is a testament to your intelligence and your sensitivity. You read the environment so well that you learn to mold yourself to its shape in order to pass through it unscathed. The problem isn't that you're bad at being yourself. The problem is that you're so good at being everyone else that you've lost the map back to you. There is a psychological pattern underlying this experience that goes deeper than just people-pleasing. In attachment theory and relational neuroscience, this is often linked to what is called a self-silencing schema or a preoccupied attachment style. But let's look at the mechanism itself. Deep within your brain, in the structures of the limbic system, there is a constant, silent calculation happening. It's a risk assessment ratio. The brain weighs the risk of connection against the risk of abandonment. For someone who has learned that expressing a separate need leads to withdrawal, anger, or coldness from a caregiver or partner, the brain recalibrates. It decides that the pain of losing yourself is less immediately dangerous than the pain of losing the other person. Think of it like this. Imagine your sense of self is a house. When you're a child, that house is still being built. If every time you hang a picture on the wall that represents you, a preference, a feeling, a boundary, the ground shakes and the windows crack, you learn to stop decorating. You learn to keep the house empty and neutral so the ground stays still. You become the architect of a vacant, peaceful home. It's safe there. Nothing breaks, but nobody truly lives there either. That's the trade-off your brain made for you. It shows safety over occupancy. The mental model that helps visualize this is the thermostat versus the weather. A person with a secure sense of self is like the weather. They have internal seasons. Sometimes they are sunny, sometimes they are stormy. They exist and others adapt to them. But a person who over-adapts is like a thermostat. You are constantly reading the temperature of the room, the emotional climate, and adjusting your internal mechanisms to make the room comfortable for everyone else. If they are cold, you heat up with enthusiasm you don't feel.
If they are hot, you cool down with apologies you don't owe. The exhausting part is that a thermostat has no temperature of its own. It is always reacting, and that is the neuroscience of it. Your brain's prefrontal cortex is overworking, constantly monitoring social cues and suppressing the signals from your own amygdala and insula, which are trying to tell you what you actually feel. You are manually overriding your own internal weather system. So, how do we begin to lower the volume on this automatic high-alert system? How do we shift from being a thermostat that burns out to being weather that just is? The process is not about becoming selfish or cold, it is about recalibrating the nervous system so that safe no longer requires invisible. The first step is noticing the shift in the body before it becomes a thought in the mind. This is grounded in somatic psychology, particularly the work around interoception, which is your ability to sense the internal state of your body. Over-adapters are often terrible at this because they are focused outward. You need to start catching the adaptation in its physical infancy.
What to do is simple but not easy. You pause. When someone asks you a question or expresses a need, do not answer immediately. Let there be a gap. In that gap of silence, which might only be 2 seconds but feels like 2 hours, you scan down, not out at their face, but down into your chest, your stomach, your jaw. Why this works in the brain is because you are giving the slower, wiser insula a chance to catch up to the lightning-fast, fear-driven amygdala. The amygdala screams danger, they're waiting, say yes. But if you wait 3 seconds, the insula can whisper that your stomach is tight and you actually don't want sushi. A real-life example is the dinner question again. Next time it's asked, let the silence hang. Feel the urge to blurt out whatever you want. Notice it's a physical pressure in your throat or a clenching in your belly. Just noticing that physical sensation is the victory. You don't even have to state a preference yet. You just have to stop the automatic override. The second step is the practice of the non-apologetic negative. Over-adapters turn every boundary into an apology. I'm so sorry, I can't. I just have this thing. I'm the worst. Rain check. We do this because we learned that saying no without a cushion of guilt is an act of aggression. Psychologically, we are trying to manage the other person's anticipated disappointment. The step is to state the limit without the emotional hedge. What to do is to simply say that you can't tonight, or that something doesn't work for you. Full stop. You do not have to give a reason. You do not have to offer an alternative. You do not have to fix their feeling. Why this works in the brain is crucial. It is a form of exposure therapy for the fear of abandonment. When you say no without the cushion, your brain's threat detection system lights up like a Christmas tree, expecting a social reprisal. But 99 times out of 100, the person just says, okay, no problem. When this happens, your brain experiences a corrective prediction error. It learns that the old rule that no equals danger is a faulty piece of code. Over time, the amygdala's alarm gets quieter. Imagine a real-life moment at work. A coworker asks you to stay late to help with their project. Instead of launching into a long explanation about how you really wish you could, but your dog has been having stomach issues and you feel terrible about it, you could say something much simpler. Just the words, "I can't stay late tonight." That's it. You feel the anxiety spike, and then you feel it pass when the world doesn't end. That is the sound of your nervous system updating its software. The third step is about reclaiming small, low-stakes preferences. Because if you can't want the right kind of sandwich, how can you want the right kind of life? This is based on the psychology of self-efficacy. Every time you make a choice, you are reinforcing the neural pathway that says, "I have agency." Over-adapters have let that pathway grow over with weeds. The step is to actively and consciously choose something just for you, with no impact on anyone else, and then voice it out loud, even if only to yourself. What to do is pick the coffee flavor you actually like, not the one the group likes. Watch the movie you've been secretly wanting to see, not the one that makes you seem cultured.
Why it works in the brain is because it strengthens the connection between the prefrontal cortex, where decisions happen, and the striatum, where reward is processed. When you choose based on your own internal compass and then receive the dopamine hit of actually enjoying it, you are literally rewiring your motivation circuitry. You are teaching the brain that what I want leads to a reward, not a punishment. A real-life example is walking past a bakery. You see a cookie you think looks good. The old pattern is telling yourself you shouldn't, you're not hungry, it's a waste of money. The new pattern is noticing that it looks delicious and you would like to eat it, and then you buy it and eat it. Not because you earned it, not because you're sad, but because you simply wanted it. This seems trivial, but it's a revolution in a brain that was trained to believe wanting was dangerous. The fourth step involves the difficult art of tolerating someone else's discomfort. This is the hardest part of the work because it feels like cruelty. We over-adapt to keep the air clear of any negativity. We are emotional air purifiers. But to stop over-adapting, you must let the air get a little dusty and learn that you can still breathe. What to do is to notice when someone is unhappy with you. Maybe they sigh, maybe they get quiet, maybe their texts get short. And you do not leap to fix it. You let them have their feeling. You let yourself have the feeling of them having a feeling. Why it works in the brain is tied to the concept of differentiation. In psychology, differentiation is the ability to maintain your sense of self while being emotionally close to others. Your brain's mirror neurons are firing, making you feel they're upset, but you have to engage the prefrontal cortex to remind yourself that their weather is not your weather. You can care about their storm without standing in the rain. A real-life example is a partner or friend who is grumpy about a choice you made.
The old you would backtrack, apologize, and change the plan to make the grumpiness go away. The new you says something like, I see you're frustrated and I'm still going to do this thing I need to do. And then you let the silence sit. The world doesn't crack open. The relationship might even get stronger because you are no longer sending the unspoken message that their mood is a bomb that only you can diffuse. You are giving them the dignity of handling their own emotional weather. The fifth and final step is the redefinition of safety. For the over-adapter, safety looks like approval. Safety is the absence of friction. Safety is a smiling face. But that's not safety. That's just a quiet hostage situation. True psychological safety in the context of relationships is the freedom to be in your full experience without the threat of exile. The step here is an internal one. You must start building a container inside yourself where your own feelings are allowed to exist without judgment. What to do is something you can practice silently in the moment. When you feel the old pull to over-adapt, you can pause and consider a particular question, not as an interrogation, but as a quiet internal check. The question is simply this: if I wasn't afraid of losing them, what would I want to say right now? You don't have to say it out loud, but you have to answer it honestly in your own mind. Why this works in the brain is because you are creating a new internal feedback loop. Instead of the loop moving from external signal to internal suppression to external harmony, it begins to move from external signal to internal check-in to internal harmony. You are giving yourself the attunement that you have been giving away to others for free. You are becoming the safe person for yourself. A real-life example is during an argument. The other person is raising their voice. Your instinct is to shut down, apologize, and make it stop. But inside, you whisper the truth to yourself. I am angry right now. I disagree with this. I don't feel seen. You may still choose to walk away or de-escalate externally, but internally you have not betrayed yourself, and that is the bedrock of a new kind of relationship. All of this can be held together by a single, quiet mental image. Remember the thermostat and the weather, but take it one step further. Imagine you are a garden. For so long you have been so focused on the weeds in your neighbor's yard or the harsh sun beating down that you have forgotten you have your own soil.
You have been pulling up your own roots so you wouldn't shade someone else's flowers. The work of stopping the over-adaptation is not about building higher fences or becoming a cactus. It is simply about turning your attention back to your own soil, feeling the texture of what is yours, watering what is yours, trusting that what grows from you belongs in the landscape of the world.
The quiet truth is that you were never bad at relationships. You were just very, very good at surviving them. But survival is not the same thing as living. And the people who truly deserve a place in your life are not looking for a reflection of themselves. They are looking for the weather of you. They are looking for the specific, unpredictable, sometimes rainy, sometimes glorious garden that only exists because you stopped pulling up your roots. As you move through the rest of this day and the days after, see if you can notice the moment just before you shapeshift. See if you can feel the pause. There is no need to announce it. There is no need to make a scene. This is a private, quiet renovation of the soul. And in that space between the question and the answer, you will find something you might have forgotten was even there. Your own voice. It's still there. It has just been waiting for the room to get quiet enough to hear it. And you are the one who finally gets to decide when the quiet has arrived.